Welcome to Evolutionary Men. I'm your host, Jason Lang. Let's get started. All right, and welcome back, everyone. Today, I am pumped to be talking with Gethin Aldous, who is a man of many talents. So just to start here, he's a film and video game maker who believes in the power of story to transform lives. He co-directed and executive produced The Work, a documentary filmed inside Folsom Prison that won the UK Grierson Award for Best International Documentary and Best Cinema Documentary. And it continues. He's also been honored with the Ron Herring Award by the Mankind Project USA and has been involved in men's work for nearly 2 decades, staffing group therapy retreats at Folsom Prison with Inside Circle and at Massachusetts Correctional Institution, Norfolk, with the Jericho Circle Project. And he is the founder of the organization All Kings, which is a community of men dedicated to justice and freedom that works to heal the wounds of isolation and oppression by bringing formerly incarcerated men into diverse intergenerational community with other men for mutual growth and healing. Amazing stuff. And I had the pleasure of meeting Gethin about a year ago at a men's conference. And just as soon as I kind of heard his story, I had seen his film and immediately found my way to him to introduce myself. And we got to do a little partner practice, which was really sweet back in the day. And it's taken me this long to get you on here, but I'm finally stoked to have you here. Welcome.
Hey, it's really good to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, I rewatched the film last night with my wife who had never seen it before, and she was just essentially in tears for the entire duration. And I've been doing my own version of men's work for 2 or 3 decades, and I'm really into shadow work. And I don't think I've seen another film that actually captures the essence of the inner work that can happen better than this. And something I really want to talk to you quite a bit about amongst everything else here. But so I want to start, for people who haven't seen The Work, what is it in your own words?
I mean, I sort of have to take a little bit of a step back because I had this. I first did like my own kind of men's weekend, maybe almost 20 years ago now, and I was a filmmaker at the time, and immediately I was like, "Well, there's a language in this that could sort of change the world, and how do we get that language into popular consciousness?" Yeah. And so I was directing reality TV shows at the time, and I was just like, "I'm going to bring it." I would do like Wife Swap. I'm going to bring it into Wife Swap, but I'm going to. I ended up getting fired. So that didn't work out. And then I just sort of was, and I'd never seen it. The problem is with men's work is it can look kind of goofy, especially if you sort of see it from the outside. And I've never been able to find a way to show in a way that I thought would sort of cut through that the judgments that people had about that. And there's a judgment about men being vulnerable and men being weak and men crying, and even men who don't think they have those judgments. And sort of men all standing around in the circle with each other, especially a sort of group of white guys sort of crying. It's just sort of a little bit dismissed. And so I was always like, how do we do this? How do we get it out there in a way that really... And then I didn't shoot the footage for The Work. Some other guys shoot it, Jarvis McCleary and his brother and a team sort of shot it. And then they sort of got stuck and it sat in a cupboard for 6 or 7 years. And then I found out about it. And I said, "Look, can I help?" I heard about it, and they said, "If you want to help, you need to come and see what we do." And so I got invited into Folsom Prison to do this 4-day retreat, which is effectively a third formerly incarcerated guys, a third incarcerated guys who are in a level 4 prison, which is one of the just shy of a supermax. Yeah. A third sort of skilled facilitators coming in from the outside, and the intention was sort of to teach the guys on the inside some of the techniques. And a third just like regular folk, which they realized was an amazing gift to the guys inside, because the regular folk would come in saying, I'm gonna come in and help the guys inside, not really knowing what they were walking into. I was one of the regular folk. I certainly didn't think I was going in to help them inside. I had a much better sense of what was actually going on. And then when they get inside, they're like, oh shoot, I've got to now. Oh, they're going to make me look at myself, and you know. And if guys are like unwilling to do that because they check at the beginning, if you're here to look at and they say if you're here to look at the monkeys in the zoo, this ain't the place to be, and we'll kick them out. And if you are here, then you're going to be doing your work too. And so basically, the film is about those three regular guys walking in to do this thing, and they have 4 days inside there. And when we first started editing the film, I was like completely disinterested in those three guys. All I cared about was the dudes inside. And I'm like, well, we're going to make a film about them because they're way more interested in these three regular dudes. And why would we? And then, you know, we did one of the screenings and someone said, no, you got to follow those three guys. They're the story. I was like, oh, wait. And then I realized, oh, of course, they're us.
Yeah.
They're me. They're you. They're the three regular folk who think they're fine and don't need to, you know, I'm good. I'm out. I'm free. I got a job. I got a wife. I got a kid. You know, I don't need to look at myself. And then going inside, it's like, now we all got something we could take a look at. There's always something behind the mask that, and I think so. That's what the film's about. And I really tried to make it in a way and structure it in a way that it felt like for me during the weekend. And it really is a sort of archetypal journey because, you know, when we do this sort of men's weekend, there's the descent, and in Folsom, the descent is just walking in. By the time you've gone through all those gates and the barbed wire and the concrete and the you know and the silence, you have to walk in single file, and then you have to walk through the main prison yard. You know, which sometimes there are guys out in the yard, sometimes there aren't. I've done like 5 of those weekends now. And then you walk into the chapel. And what was amazing about it is they do this big speech before you go in, like the prison do, like, don't touch them, all these things. And then even the guys who facilitate had their own sort of rules. It's like, you know, don't shake hands with someone until they shake hands with you. If you hug someone one day, don't assume you can hug them the next day. You know, this kind of... Yeah. And so, you know, building up this sense of nervousness going in. And then when I walked through the chapel, this guy, this sort of Mexican guy with the sort of pants kind of low, just went, "Welcome to my house, man. Welcome to my house." And I was just like, oh, wow. Well, this is wild. And it changed my life.
Yeah. Oh, man. I can only imagine just having seen the experience of the 3 men you followed. And you're definitely curious about some of the movements you had. And, you know, I was definitely noticing that last night. There's a really profound, you know, this thing I sometimes have to try to explain to people who've never been in circle in the ways we're talking about here, of how one man's work will often start to move and activate another man's work, and something starts to move through the circle as the weekend or week progresses. And there's just some incredible moments of kind of resonance and refraction, I would say, in that documentary you captured, of a man's deepest fears kind of being embodied by someone in the prison, another man who has so much judgment about what his wounding is in some sense, and receives, I mean, the closest thing I could name it is like a blessing at the very end of the film from another man who really affirms that, hey, your pain matters, and I see what you just moved through. And it like just, I mean, it wrecks me because it's so pro-human, you know, something you captured there that you were able to pull out of, I imagine, quite a bit of footage that really landed, certainly for me. And, you know, again, is like what I just want to hand to people to say, hey, like, just watch this. If something moves in you, okay, there's a thread for you to follow, whether, you know, you go that route exactly, or many of the other routes we'll talk about. But
and just, to finish real quick, and one thing I didn't say, and so when that footage came to me, I realized, oh, this was a way to talk about men's work, which was actually accessible, because if they can do it,
yes,
they can do it. If they can be vulnerable, if the Bloods, the Crips, the Mexican Mafia, these rival gangs who are sworn enemies out on the yard, if they can come together and be vulnerable. Like, what's your experience?
It's brilliant. I mean, and it deflates so much of the, I don't know, I guess, instantaneous reaction people have to vulnerability of like, no, that, these guys, they're as tough as you can get, right? And they have walked through a level of pain most men can't even fathom, and they're still willing to step in to this vulnerable place. So you can't, that whole like, well, you can't, it doesn't work. It just does not work. And this is, probably the only other example I've seen of that in a way that I'm just thinking of right now that was more in the fictional, but the movie Moonlight that came out, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. The end of that is so beautiful, where it shows, oh, wait, the stereotype and then what's inside, and it just deflates so much of the argument. And I'm curious, as much as you're willing to, what kind of work came up for you as you actually entered the circle?
Oh, you would ask that now.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, like my sort of journey of my own kind of healing journey has been a long found one, and there was some deep sort of wounds I picked up as a child. I have an amazing relationship with my mother now, but she left when I was 2. And I didn't meet her till I was 10. So I had that. And then my father remarried, and he remarried a woman who came with her own wounds. And I think she saw my mum as a threat. And so she would just try to convince me that my mother didn't love me, and she was the only one that ever did. And I think it really messed up my young, vulnerable 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old self in a major way. And there's been lots of different pieces of work I've done over the years, and it's funny because some of them I have to revisit over and over again. That's the point where I'm just irritated. It's like, I've done that one. Like, really, that one still. But at least I can sort of, it doesn't consume me as much as it used to, and I can see that the ones that were really hard. I was like, okay, I recognize what that is. I'm learning to sort of live with it a lot better. But this particular wound around my stepmom, those guys took me on the first weekend in Folsom. They took me so deeply into that. And I remember standing on the edge, not wanting to go. And it's and the container in Folsom, like the container, like, I don't think we haven't done men's work. There's this, most men's weekends, and there's a container that's being built. And some, my experience, are more powerful than others. And some you can just you can almost touch it in the air. Yeah. So the one in Folsom, and people told me going, it's like, you've done men's work for, what you're seeing here is like nothing else. And it was like it was electric. And I think everyone in the room could feel it. And it was just this sense of like, because everyone was doing things that were going places that could actually get them killed. And they were making a choice that they'd rather not live with the pain, even if it meant dying. They'd make that choice to, like, I'm going to risk my life to heal. And to see, and to be in that kind of environment, to see that, it's just like, oh. And so I remember sort of standing on the edge of this, the pain of this sort of wound from my stepmom. And I remember the guy, it was this guy, he died now, but he was a guy from the outside called the Man of Many Coats. That was his sort of dream name, spirit name, whatever you want to call it. And it's because the prison administration thought he was one of them. And the people and the prisoners thought he was one of them. And it was just like, he had this way of, and he just, I can't remember what he said. He whispered something in my ear, and that was it. And I just went all the way down into the wound, and I was raging. I had like 4 inmates sort of holding me down, but I was screaming and raging and just letting this sort of pain out that I didn't realize how much it was affecting my life. And the sort of miracle of that one, I felt like I carried her around, and this message, this sort of negative message, but I carried around my whole life. And the miracle of this one is I put her down. It was like one of these few times she's like, it's gone.
Yeah.
And I walked out of there just like a new man with this thing just like not in me anymore. So it was completely, so my first weekend was completely transformational. So was my second one for different reasons. It just more that I witnessed something, and then someone told, just real quick, like someone told me watch out for the synchronicity that happens after one of these weekends. And so after my second one, which I saw something which I can't talk about, was so profound and so brave and so transformational. And then for like 36 hours, the most insane synchronicity, almost like I was challenging the universe. Go and prove it to me. Prove that this thing is real and that it is outside of the normal that we, you know. And the universe like, okay, got it yet? Got it yet? And kept going a little bit deeper. The last one, I was like, I surrender. I got it.
Wow. Yeah, I can just feel the transformation even in your recounting of it. And, you know, I think this is the thing that I so appreciate. I think the film really captures, your story captures, and that I love about the work, that as we step into it, we realize the gift of what it means to witness another man in particular step into that place. And, you know, so many men I work with, part of their struggle is the judgment they have of, oh my God, I don't want to burden you, Gethin, with my grief or my pain, or so I'm just gonna hold it here. And then you do a piece of work and they're like, oh my God, thank you. That was so brave. Like, thank you for doing that. And then it's the moment of you realize that same thing you're feeling, that's what they feel when you do it. And as a room starts to sink into that, it's just incredible. The mechanism, the healing that can happen. And, you know, what would you say in that work? And I know you've participated in different ways, as you've seen, you know, the so-called hardest men in the system weeping, holding each other, releasing. What does that tell us about, you know, what tends to be underneath for so many men?
I mean, I think if we went around the 2 million men incarcerated in America and asked them about their childhood, pretty much every single one of them. I think there's a few outliers for sure, because I've met a few, but on the whole, they come from an incredibly traumatic. And there's a moment where your innocence is shattered, and it might be even pre-verbal, it might be when you just arrived in the world, like immediately. And some it's just like, you know, the stories I've heard, it's like, yeah, how did you not kill somebody? Of course you did. Of course you did. You know, and so I think, you know, that, you know, and I you know, at the same time, I think there's some people just born with you know, wiring's messed up in their brain, and they were sort of destined to be that, you know, that, and then sort of environment can help or it can make it worse. But I think a lot of the guys that I work with just suffered unspeakable traumas when they were younger, and so that a decision was made inside themselves to never be the victim again, you know. And then before we know it, I saw this amazing piece of art the other day at the Whitney, and this woman had written 5 lines on her hand, on the left and on the right, and the guy said, what's that? And she said, oh, the ones on the left are all the times today that I've been the victim. And he said, what's on the right? She said, that's all the times today I've been the perpetrator. And it just landed with me, and it's just like, yeah, people who were victims become perpetrators to make sure they're never victims again. And this trauma lays on top of each other, and we never look at it. Oh, look what you've done. Right, go inside, and now we're gonna break you. We're gonna break you. We're gonna break you down, and we're gonna, you know. And in some ways, maybe that works, and eventually you just sort of crush the demon by just, you know. But imagine if we turn prisons into a place of healing. Like the way I see the criminal justice system is if someone is a danger to society, remove them from society to no longer a danger. And it's sort of like the punishment and all that kind of thing. I'm not sure where I stand on that, but like, all right, can we protect society, and what's the best way of doing that? Well, imagine if we took people out of society, gave them this kind of program, like the guys and some of the guys in that film who are now out in the world, some of the most extraordinary men I've ever met in my life, because they've gone there. They've gone into the depths of their pain and their trauma, not just the trauma on themselves, but the pain that they caused others. And now they're out in the world making amends by helping young men in the carceral system, by going back into prisons and doing circles in there and going, you know, it's just like, so imagine if someone into prison and then came out to become one of the most productive members of society because we gave them the tools to heal.
Yeah.
And we gave them the tools of transformation. And in order to heal those level of wounds, you've got to go so deep. And the deeper, it's down, like right down where next to where you hurt the most is where your
Yeah.
greatest gift is. So they go down into that well and they bring back the gold. And
Yeah, was that it's been a year, but I feel like you shared a story with me about one of the moments you had to fight for in the film. Was it the poem?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm connecting the dots because I heard that again when I watched it last night, and it's absolutely essential for that story.
the
And
well of grief is the poem. Yeah.
yeah,
Those who
that
will not slip beneath the still surface on the well of grief, and that idea that you got to go down there into that well and find the
and it
gold.
because it contextualizes everything that comes after, and it gives a language that even the people in the work refer back to, right? That I think really helps translate what exactly is happening to the wider audience that's not in the room. And yeah, I was watching that last night and I was like, oh my God, I remember we were talking and he did. I was like, I think that's the moment. And yeah, it's so beautiful. You just tied that in because you're right. And, um, I'm curious with the men you've gotten to know who have entered that experience from the outside, you know, obviously it's different per man, but what do you find, like, what drives a man to say, hey, I'm going to do this thing?
I'm going to go into Folsom and start one of these
Yeah,
weekends.
like right. It's some kind of call or pain, or I'm just curious if you've noticed anything about that over the years.
About the men who've been called from the outside to go in and support them on the inside. Is that the
Yeah,
question? Yeah,
or like that third
yeah,
wave, those participants, like the
yeah,
guys you
yeah.
followed.
I, I have a few friends because they just hear about it. And if
Hmm.
if you're a little bit of an adventurer, and if you're interested in men's work and you're interested in healing, yeah, it's just like, well, if that's where the deepest work's happening for me, that's where the deepest work's happening. That's the place to go. So, I mean, I remember they invited me, and I was just like, well, hell yes, like yeah, straight away. I was like, oh my god, really? I can come, you know, um, because I'm deeply committed to my own healing. Like I believe, like I believe every single person has this purpose burning in them, this thing that their sort of role in the cosmic drama, their hero's journey, their call, their whatever you want to call it, their note they're supposed to sing, um, and our job is to do whatever we can to get out of the way of ourselves and get rid of all the sort of programming that stops that. At least mine, for me, like my job is to get out of anything that's stopping me from being on mission, being on purpose. I have this thing that's screaming through me. It's like, come on, this is what we got to do.
Yeah.
And all of these, my stories and my trauma were getting in the way of it. And I was like,
Hmm.
when I've tried to ignore it, and as I told you earlier, I get fired and my whole job's down. And there's this part of me that just sabotages me because you're not on mission. And it was just like,
Yeah.
I didn't have a choice, man. I
Yeah.
didn't have a choice.
Uh,
Like, and I think it's the same with a lot of people. They're just like, called to the healing, called to the transformation.
that's a beautiful, I think, way to put it. Yeah, there's like that. It's a literal call, and I can see it in some of those guys. They don't know where else to go, but there's an impulse that something could happen here that I know I yearn for, but I don't know how to get there. And that's certainly something as I've, continued in this work. So I think one of the major problems I certainly see is both as a society and as individuals, men do not know what to do with their pain. Like literally, what do I do with it? And our culture, by default, doesn't really help too much. And if anything, just says, well, drink it away, smoke it away, fuck it away, Instagram it away. And, part of what's so beautifully captured, I think, in that work, and I know the work you do elsewhere, is it's a place to bring your pain and to be with it and to metabolize it. And, I went back to the conference we were at this year and I had known about his work a little bit, but somebody referenced Father Richard Rohr. And he's just this beautiful, like one line sentence of, pain we don't transform, we transmit. And so our work, our responsibility as men is take responsibility for my pain. What does it mean for me to step into it? I didn't ask for it, right? So what's so beautiful and moving about the film is, you hear some of the stories, those moments where the flame went out on the innocent little boy, and you can feel, oh, of course his life went a certain direction. And that their willingness in the midst of, pretty bleak situation, oftentimes, to take responsibility and step into it. I mean, I still feel inspired now, right? Just talking about it, I'm like, oh my God, I want to go do some more work, get in deep, support other men. And I think it's just, again, something you captured so beautifully in that, I was doing some work recently with a partner of mine, and just for whatever reason, I'm now seeing it in the film of, kind of 3 steps to loose framework, restorative justice. But first, for us men, we have to release the pain. Like, we actually have to be in and start to release and move the pain. And only then, I think, does it even become possible to start to take responsibility for ourselves and what we've done. And then only then can we ever even begin to repair, to come back to the people we hurt or harmed. And that first piece, I think, is part of what I see just, in the documentary. I haven't done the program, but what I imagine you're capturing in a lot of that work is men are able to release and start to take responsibility. And then, the rest flows from there. Like you said, some of these guys come out and they're the paragons of what redemption can look like, and what, okay, because I've walked in the fire, I've walked through that pain. And to some extent, they're more capable than anyone else to then shepherd other people through that pain, because it's like, hey, I went from A to B. I'm not just sitting on my, therapist chair. Like, I did it. So come, let's get in there. And again, just something so beautiful that comes through so powerfully in such a potent documentary.
Thank you. It's something you said earlier. I just want to jump on it. That's okay.
Yeah.
So I actually, I think there is a fundamental physiological need in all people, and certainly in men, because women go through a different sort of physical transformation, and it's sort of the theories around this, but I'm not entirely convinced. But anyway, certainly in men, for an initiatory experience, for that initiation, we're all going to pick up wounds in our childhood. Coming into life is often wounding in itself, and we're all, have a wonderful parents. We all think we are, I think I'm a wonderful parent, I'm sure, there are going to be wounds of childhood. And this idea of an initiation has existed for thousands and thousands of years in every single indigenous culture, culture across the globe, certainly every healthy culture, that there's a point where you have to step into being a man. Like, you have to give up, you let go of the wounds of your childhood and step into who you're supposed to be. And this thing, like this cosmic drama thing, like I talked about, this idea, there's this thing that you're supposed to be. And then, people have known about this, and they've created ritual around it. Some of it was violent and scarring and this, and it was always pull the boys away from the women in the village, and the men would take them out, and they would do this thing, or nature, or whatever it was, to help you find that purpose. And I remember, my first men's group was Mankind Project. It's like the sort of OG of men's work in America. And it took a friend 7 years to convince me to go. Every time I saw him, he's like, have you done it yet? Have you done it yet? My friend Adrian. I didn't name check him in something I did recently, so I'm going to name check a composer friend of mine, Adrian Miller, calling you out. It took my friend Adrian 7 years to convince me to do my first men's weekend. And he was telling me, and he would tell me the story about initiation. He's like, you're a child, and the world's been run by children because they've never been initiated into healthy manhood. And and for years he told me that. And I remember one day I just sat up upright in my bed, and it was like at 3 a.m. And I was like, whatever he's been telling me, I need it, and I need it now. And I just had my first child, and there was this thing like, oh my God, I'm a child. I'm about to raise another child. I'm a 32-year-old child, and I'm about to raise another child. And it turned out there was a Mankind Project weekend 9 days later, just up the road. So I think, they build a container. I think the energy hit me.
Yeah.
Like, it's there. Let me go get it. Barataji, who's in the film, was one of the co-leaders of it. He's one of the guys. He's the guy that does the speech at the end. It's the work, yo. He's what said the last line. The second time I met him was in Folsom Prison. When I went to my first weekend, I sat down like 15 years later. I'm like, whoa, 10 years later. But I remember the feeling of walking down that pathway. My whole body, like to start the weekend, my whole body was vibrating. Like I'd never felt anything like it in my life. And I was like, I need something, and I need it desperately. And if this isn't it, I don't know what I'm going to do. And it was like this. And I'm one of the lucky ones because I found it. And I think there's so many men out there vibrating like that. And they don't know what to do. And they don't know where to put it. And they don't know where the community is that can hold them through it and through their transformation and through their grief and through their trauma and through their pain. And like, how do we normalize that? Well, I love that in the film when a guy says, that's when I learned to cry like a man with my chin
I was just thinking of that line. I was just like, boom.
How do we teach
what a model?
That masculinity? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Wemby, I forget his name, the really tall basketball player who was just against the Knicks. He cried after a game, and someone asked him about it, and almost the interview almost shamed him. And he said, "There's nothing wrong with vulnerability." And I was like,
yeah,
go on,
it's coming.
It's coming. Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, there's a way.
We need to change the story around it, which is why I'm obsessed with storytelling. Like,
exactly.
How do we change the story?
Yeah, and I think the beauty of the film and the work itself is, certainly what I've experienced in the room. What I hear you speaking to is so many men that they don't have a model. There's no pathway. Our culture doesn't say, here's what it looks like, right? What many men experience is, well, I don't want to be that because, I was bullied or abused or hurt or have seen the damage, the masculine can do. And they're like, no. And then they kind of go to the other side and there's, collapse. I work with a lot of guys like that, but there's no model for what does it mean to just be fully in yourself without, shame about it. And the work itself, I think, models that, right? I like to say it's a transmission. When you're standing there and you see another man fully touch his grief, but shoulders up, face up, or he starts down, but then he finds that like unbelievable power to just come up back into connection and be seen. It immediately transmits something. Oh, fuck, that's what it is. I didn't know that was possible. Or when a man moves his anger and it's safe, right? In a way where he's like, yeah, I'm contained. I brought it here so I don't bring it out there. It teaches something to us really fast. And the film itself, certainly I would argue does that because you capture some moments like that where it's like, wow, okay, I had my judgments, right, about what that would look like, but that guy's incredible, right? I would never shame him for his tears or whatever. And I think the film is such a gift that you've created in that. And I imagine something you're passionate about doing in other ways as well. So speaking of which, one of the unique things is, you kind of got to fill me in here because I know a little bit, but not a ton, but like it didn't just stop with the film and you created this organization, All Kings. Tell me a little bit about what inspired that and what you've been up to with it.
Here's a funny thing about that is I what I found in Folsom was there was a sort of a realness and a rawness to guys that have done time and a accountability and something quite extraordinary. I experienced that room so I flew over like 5 times to do these weekends over there. And then one time I was there and one of the guys on the inside was like, wait a minute, you fly all the way from New York City to California to do this shit with us? Why don't you just do it in New York? And it just landed. And I was like, why not do it in New York? Why don't I bring this to New York? And I had a friend who had done this program called A Band of Brothers in the UK. It's a guy called Michael Boyle, a thing called A Band of Brothers, which was a program for formerly incarcerated young men, like 18 to 26. And this idea, which I sort of extrapolated on, was like, well, if you bring in sort of older guys who'd done time and done their healing, and then the young guys would see them, and maybe we can get the young guys before they do the big crime, and before they do the 20 years, and before maybe we can catch them on. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the sort of So I'd been to see. I discovered that weekend because a friend said he used Story as part of the weekend. So I went to see it in my quest to sort of find, how he could use Story to kind of, um, to bring this stuff into popular consciousness. And then, and so then I sort of walked around with this idea, and then we made the film, and then there was this guy called Kevin Wall who was doing screenings of the work. He ran this space in New York. We saw this tech company, but they would they want to do sort of, things in their space in the evenings. And so he was doing screenings of it and invited me to come and speak there. And the way he sort of held the space afterwards, and each time we did a few of them, and each time he held it in a deeper way. And I was just like, oh, this guy's amazing. So we went down the pub one night, and I was just like, okay, I've got this idea. What do you think? Do you think we can do it here? And he was like, okay, if you can get me like a tiny amount of money, come out like 25 grand a year or something, it's like, you can get me that, I'll quit my job, do this, 20 hours a week, and we'll do this thing. And yeah, one of the guys who invested in the work, I got him his money back, and he just said, what do you want to do now? And he just sort of held the check kind of thing. And I was like, well, I've got this idea for a men's group. So he gave us like $70,000. Guy called Sam Hauser. And off we went. And then Kevin brought this guy called Ishin, who just got out of prison after 30 years. He'd done like 35 years in total, but he just got out. And we sort of got to work. And it was like 7 years ago. Oh. And now we're a proper organization. We have a full-time executive director called Raul, who is just an extraordinary human being. We have 3 other full-time guys. We have about 8 part-time. I'd say around 500 people. And what we do is we do weekends, but it's sort of half formerly incarcerated or at-risk youth and half not. So you sort of bring, that's part of the magic. Is like this idea that you're formerly incarcerated, you just heal with other formerly incarcerated people. Or like there's this sort of trust. I've got a few guys that I'm the first white guy they ever trusted. So we're bringing people of different color, different races, and we're coming together in this. They just did a weekend just now. I wasn't there because I had tickets to England at the World Cup, but I took my son. But I can feel the energy of it. Like we just had a meeting today. We were talking about it. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary, and like the lives that we've touched and changed. I think I said 500 people have gone through this program at this point. And there's leadership development, and we're sort of finally cracking a sort of facilitation training model, and it's all free. We get grants. We give it to all the guys for free. In fact, you're a former incarcerate, we'll pay you $100 to come on a weekend. So normally this stuff is completely out of reach of people without resources. $800 a weekend, like no, or even like 200. Like we're talking guys who are like, I don't know when I'm going to eat next. Living in a shelter. And I said, well, come up here. We'll feed you. We'll do some deep emotional work, and we'll give you $100 on the way home, so you can buy yourself some dinner. And the impact it has had on the men that have been a part of it, and the lives that I've seen change, and the lives that it has saved. Like I don't think I can count on 2 hands the amount of guys that told me they were going to kill themselves, and they discovered this, and it saved their life. I can think of 7 without trying. So it's it's one of the sort of proudest. I mean, it's not my full-time job. My mission is to is to use the virtual world as a vessel for global transformation. So I'm video games and film and TV. That is, and as much as awakens is one of my proudest things. It's not my full-time job. Like I made that choice. Like I staff the weekends, I run circles, I do, but I can't hold the organization.
Totally.
Thank God, better men than me can. But it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary.
Well, I think it's
and last year we started a female version as well. So there's no
incredible. Yeah. Amazing. I didn't know that. That's profound. And yeah, I mean, just talking about that, it's not my full-time thing. I think one of the things I just enjoyed in our connection last year, and feel like I'm getting even more from you, is, certainly as someone who's had the privilege of being in the transformational world, because I could pay for those things and do those things and, go down deep and come back and see, oh my God, everybody needs to be able to go here, right? And one of the pain points is always, well, what if someone doesn't want to go there yet, right? How do they even know? If they don't even know it's possible, like, how do you start the process to let human beings know something else is possible? And, when I first got into this work, I came in through this philosopher who'd write these, 600-page books, and, oh my God, you got to read this thing. And nobody reads it, right? It's like, no, it's not going to happen. But one of the things, I think I agree with I'm projecting here, but you can let me know, that's so amazing about something like video games or movies is you're meeting people where they're at. So if I'm like, hey man, you should just watch this film sometime, it really impacted me, people don't like think twice about it, right? They're just going to put it on, they're going to watch it. It's not like some da-da-da-da thing. And it's like a gateway in that I imagine helps get the people to your kind of weekends in some sense. And, I'm curious, like what are you finding is working, or what's got you lit up about that process right now, or what the challenges are in this, in some sense, media saturated environment?
It's funny, as you started asking the question, I thought you were going in a different direction. So I kind of just quickly answer that one first. Like,
sure,
the way we get a lot of guys these days is our guys will show up in re-entry programs and just talk. And they just see them. They just see the way they're holding themselves and the way they drop into their vulnerability. And they're just like, I want that.
That's that transmission.
These dudes are amazing. And they just, and so they go out with that, and people see it in them. In terms of like, how do we bring it? I mean, the work is an interesting one because, it's a documentary. Documentaries aren't particularly mainstream, and we didn't win an Oscar, and we didn't do that sort of run. And the publisher that sort of bought the rights didn't really put the money behind it. You need to put behind it. And we were like 6 months before the Me Too movement. I think if we'd hit a year later, we would have come as the antidote to that. We would have probably gone to Sundance and done the much, much bigger, and got a lot more publicity around it. But it's, it's got a long tail, as they say. Like, I constantly, I hear it's been screened here, it's been shown here, someone's doing a conversation here. I mean, it's some university course, they teach a course around it. It's just like, it's crazy. But it's this amazing men's work tool out there, which I'm immensely proud of my role in getting that into the world. And now my challenge. All right, so that's going to the people who are looking for it. How do I get the people who aren't looking for it? And how do I open them up in a way that they didn't expect it? And I used to work at Rockstar Games, who make the biggest video games in the world. And I was like, could I bring it into Grand Theft Auto? Like, turns out I couldn't. But anyway, it was a nice thought. And so now I've sort of got, I've got this. We've got a pilot script for a prison drama, which basically tells the origin story of how that circle in Folsom came about. And we sort of wanted to tell it as a multi-part, prison like drama, TV drama, because it's one of the most extraordinary stories I've ever heard of a guy called Pat Nolan who's dying of hepatitis C, who's in prison for life. He's going to die in that yard. There was a prison riot over, the smallest thing is like a couple of hairs on a deodorant bottle, which someone had paid across gang lines, and they'd used the deodorant bottle, which is the ultimate sort of disrespect. I know that's exactly the true story, but that's our fictionalized version of it. But and what did happen was it caused a riot of 1,000 people, 100 people plus were stabbed, 2 or 3 people were killed. And this guy, Pat Nolan, woke up in the aftermath of this riot and was like, there has to be another way. And so this one guy, and in this sort of time where we like to tell ourselves a story about how powerless we are, what's more powerless than dying in prison? And yet still, this guy changed the world. I can plot the path of his direct lineage to saving lives in New York City as a part of All Kings. That's Pat's lineage. Like, that's how he changed the world. And I just want to tell this story of like, how do we come together? How do we come together? But, to tell a story like that, I've got to get past TV executives. Mm-hmm. And they, and I don't know if you watch much TV, but there's not a lot of risk taken out there. And there's not a lot of, this worked with the same filmmakers, the same thing. And so I'm like fully in my magician now, trying to work, like, how can I, and I made another little pilot for a show the other day, which we just screened at a film festival in LA. And it's a great little pilot, but again, and I can make it for next to nothing. But it's like, how do I get it past the gatekeepers? And so, and I've also developing a video game, which I wanted to make this wildly ambitious one, raised lots of money, built a sort of demo, and I need a bunch more money to make this thing. And again, it was sort of went up again. And I have to say, in video games, they were much more open to it.
Interesting.
They just didn't quite trust my. I mean, it's, you know, I'm coating the broccoli and chocolate. Like, I'm not like, it's a transformational video game. Like games for change, which is the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Which is like, play my game and you'll understand how bad rape is. It's like, no one's playing that game. Mm-hmm. Sorry, a few people will play it, but that's, you know, not people who don't know the message. You know, so it's like, how do I? And you know, I learned a lot in the last 3 or 4 years about what it takes to build trust to give me a load of money. And I don't think we had a good enough studio and a good enough team to do it. And so now I'm making like a super, super low budget game that does it. So I got this sort of low budget game. I've also been hired by another gaming company to help sculpt their story. So now I'm just like, well, in what ways can I just drop stories into the popular consciousness, which, you know, for the player are just they want a deep story. These are all universal truths. And how can I, you know, give people these universal truths, which just start to, you know, make the ground just a little bit more fertile, that when you hear about a men's weekend up the road, you're like, do you know what? I'm sort of open to that. Or when you hear someone talking about trauma, it's like, oh yeah, I learned a little bit about that in the last game. I've touched something in the last game I played. So that's my mission. That's what I'm working on at the moment. And it's been really hard. It's been really hard. I've had a lot of no's, a lot of rejections, and the beauty is there's this thing inside me that's just like, nope, keep going. Keep going. You'll find a way. You'll find a way. And I think if you talked to me a month ago, I'd be like, ugh. But I actually feel like I'm starting to find a way.
You're finding a way. Yeah. Well, it's testament, man, to your devotion is what I really hear. Devotion to healing and making, you know, the experience you got to experience, the experience you captured in the story so beautifully of the work, and the experience you're giving people in All Kings and All Queens, you know, is available to as many people as possible. So consider me an acolyte any way I can support and get the word out, or like legit, man, like this is how things move. And, you know, I've been kind of crafting this narrative in my own head this recent years of like, I'm all in on men's groups, right? Getting guys into men's groups. Every man should be in a men's group. And as I kind of sat with why, I think you named it in a lot of ways, right? I'm going to be 46 this year. I tend to work with a lot of men, you know, 35 up to 70 or so oftentimes. And in the healing world, you know, for those of us privileged, we spend tens of thousands of dollars on retreats and therapies and sound healings and work to often try to unwind wounds that are created in those first 10 years. Right. And so what would it mean for a generation to come in without those, right? Without those, and to just, okay, like I'm good. And, you know, I was like, well, what's the pathway to that? Well, healthy men create healthy relationships, whether they father children or part of communities. They help bring in safe spaces for kids to flourish. And, you know, it's just, you named it so well in one of the shadow groups I work on. We call it the boyful flame. It's this like such a precious, tender thing in boys, I think in particular, just like unbridled love, joy, enthusiasm, curiosity. And, you know, the men I work with haven't been through some of the depths some of the men you work with, but most men can often name the moment their flame was snuffed. Just like, yeah, I was asking Dad a question. And he said, just shut up. Stop asking so many questions. And their life just goes from there. And to be able to read.
I just want to say, I think it's really important not to compare.
Yes,
that's something we
ranking
talk about
pain.
A lot of things. Your pain is your pain. And it's just as valid as someone who you're going to project had way more pain than me, so I don't need... No. Your pain is as valid as anybody else.
The film captures that so beautifully, and it is right. I think it is one of that is one of the big tensions in our culture right now. Is everybody loses when we try to rank pain, and even in men's work, sometimes there's like, well, do men really need circles to themselves? Yes, men's work is human work, right? Just like women's work, just like trans work. Like, we all need these spaces, because when we rank pain, everyone loses. And you've transmitted that, I think, in a beautiful way in the stories you captured in that, and in the movie in particular, and just the way you just so said that so clearly. And I think it's one of the important parts of initiation, like you talked about, when our pain is honored, whatever it is, right? When someone looks us in the eye, looks in, man to man, looks you in the eye and says, your pain matters. That can change a man's life. Just someone saying, your pain matters. I see it. I see you. And man, thank you so much for donating your time here and spending some time with me. It was so delightful to get a little bit more of your story, and I really want to stay connected and support everything you're up to, and maybe come do a weekend sometime. Would love that. And what's the best way for listeners to support you or follow you or keep up with the things you want them to keep up with?
My company name, where we're developing the TV shows and games, is MythoWorks. MythoWorks.com. Check out what we're doing there. I do have an Instagram page, which I haven't been doing a very good job of creating any content for, but I'm going to start working that a little bit more. Allkings.org. If you're in the New York area and you want to support, please reach out. Come and do one of our weekends. As I say, it's free. We have some great supporters who give us grants to kind of pay for this stuff. Go do a men's weekend. Find you. Go do your initiation, and model it for the men in your community.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much once again, Gethin. Look forward to staying in touch. And for everyone listening, till next time.